My dear mongrels, here's the progression of this video. The second of 4, infusing your with glorious and nipple melting Florence Academy style portrait knowledge. Your face! That's now the next stage in the painting process at this point, after we have the colors mixed, is to go in with some basic colors, right? Basic values, that is how light or dark something is. And again, do we go and start detailing the eyelashes and the nostrils and doing all this stuff and adding up perfect color and this and that, spending all day to mix? No. Why? Because we need to correct the big shapes like we always have to do. It's just like in drawing. That's why I do so many drawing videos. Start very basic and then we hone into the final details once the big shapes are correct, because otherwise the details laying on top of those big shapes are themselves going to be incorrect and we're going to have wasted all that time in doing so. So my whole thing is always just pursuing the drawing. No matter what stage we're at, even if it's the fine detail stage where we're doing all this stuff, I'm looking at the entire shape, and what that's going to do is going to force me to try to understand everything and how every little piece fits into the overall shape. And that understanding should show in your work. You're going to make less mistakes and you should actually go quicker at the expense of going slower at first, having to learn this, because let's face it, when we're at the beginning stages, we're all idiots, except for myself, of course. I've been very clear about this. And it takes a lot of time to learn this stuff. So what do? We're going to squint down at this point, and I purposefully left some mistakes here for you peasants. I did not make these by mistake. I did these on purpose so that I could in fact demonstrate to you and also seem like I'm very down to earth towards humans who do make mistakes, like I can relate to that, because I don't, but I can relate to it because of my gigantic brain. So at this point, I'm going to go in with probably, let's say, not the lightest light. I'm going to kind of compress the values just a little bit, and we're not worrying so much about color. Now, if you've seen my videos on mixing color, right, it will give you a very clear insight as to how I go about building the color up, mixing colors, and in this case, I'm now applying that in drawing form, right? And so essentially how that goes, I first focus on the value, that's how light or dark it is, and then I will touch it up with some color. Now, in the beginning, don't worry so much about color. Right here, as we can tell, I have my values mixed from dark to light, these piles of paint. And so if I want to make something more colorful right now, like say I make a light and dark between these, right, between this, then I can say, oh, it needs to be more orange, then I can add some here, or it needs to be more red, then I can add some here. So this is how you want to paint, going forward and such. But in the very beginning, we don't really need to, whoops. Oh, one second, my dad's falling asleep. Dad, essentially what we want to do, I don't want you, if you're a beginner, don't worry about the colors so much as we do the overall values, because we're just trying to correct these large shapes and just block them in. So normally I would be going and adding myself, because I've been doing this for a while, I might be going and adding a little bit more color to things, but I'm going to actually not do that right now for your sake, so it's more simple for you. I want to give you some simple exercises. Think of it like we're trying to slow ourselves down and break down the process so we understand the process, but it also gives us steps to step up to the level in which we want. It's like a great athlete who is trained can jump up to the top, but it takes a lot of steps to get there, right? If that makes sense. I don't even know if that made sense, but I think you get what I'm saying. Whoops. And so that's good that I did that. I'm glad that, so if I think that value shouldn't go there, then I could put this over here in this piece. And my eyes, I'm squinting down and just trying to see the overall impression, and I am flashing my eyes back and forth between the reference photo and the actual painting. So right now, this is kind of like a transitional value, and I'm working with hog hair bristle brushes, and especially around the edges, they're gonna turn a little bit. So I am keeping this paint right here a little bit darker, so that I'll turn the edge. I'm doing soft brush strokes, and you can still, you know, put some definition behind them, but it's nice to put things down. I like putting them down a little bit softer at first, and so far I've really only used one brush. I am just using just enough walnut oil to make the paint malleable, right? To make the paint malleable. And so this is essentially one brush right here that I'm using, and I'm just gonna fade that there. And then this piece right here, let's take that up just a little bit. And I'm squinting down. There's gonna be much more light here, and we're gonna bring the light up. So I like kind of bringing the values down just a little bit more than they might be. That means make them darker. And so then I can bring the light up as I go, right? That is the idea behind it. So then we're gonna have some down here, which actually might be going off the page. But anyway, so we're coming up here, and then let's fill this piece in now. Let me show you. Normally at this stage, I'll have about 3, maybe 4 brushes, and each of those brushes has a value range. So you might have a darker brush, a lighter shadow brush, a mid-tone brush, and then a light brush. And I'm not worried about graying color out right now. And what I mean by that is when we mix, for example, between values right here, it looks like a little bit more gray paste. That's why in the final stages you want to be thinking of color, so adding some color in to offset that grayness so you can get the value, but then you also get the color, you push the color. I'm not worrying as much about that if I'm a student right now. We're just trying to think black and white, essentially, but with this type of color. So it's not really black and white, obviously, it has some color to it. So this is just the very basic stages right here. And so I'm going to, once I fill this in, I will probably do some corrections with this, and I will also time lapse this forward for you guys so you can kind of see, because at this stage I'm going relatively quickly, but I want you thinking going slow like this. When you're painting, you don't need to be going that fast. Just go slow and see what you're doing. If your brush starts getting dirty, go back to the palette and think about what you're putting back onto it. This whole point, so I speed up to show you guys, to make it so the video is not like freaking 5 hours, but I'm trying to get y'all to slow yourselves down, so when you're painting, you're going a little bit slower, you're thinking about the values, you're thinking about the forms, right? And then you're coming back to the palette, you're making mistakes, but you know how to correct it. And notice I'm not like throwing the paint on very thick at first. There's nothing wrong with painting thick, but sometimes it's very good to, especially when you're beginning, just keep it relatively thin, and you can slowly build the thickness up over time. I lost the drawing here, I put that over there. Obviously I did that on purpose. And I'll show you exactly how to fix that. And let me do it right now, because I always say I'm gonna fix something and then I kind of get distracted because I'm always looking all around, right? And then I kind of forget to come back to it until much later. So if we have it here like this, for example, I'm gonna go in with the third brush I'm using. So I use the mid-tone brush, I use the light brush, and now I'm using, let's say it's not the darkest dark, but a shadow color brush, right? And I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna squint down, and this piece right here, I'm just gonna drop right back down just a little bit, and it's making kind of a sharp edge, okay? And that's okay, that's okay. And because we can always go back in with kind of the in-between brush, which is gonna be this one. I'm gonna wipe it off right here on my paper towel and come back in and get, you know, something around this dark value about right here. So we have from dark to light, and I'm kind of in the mid-tones right here. Something I think is gonna turn. I'm not really gonna think about the color right now. I'm gonna squint down. I'm just gonna try to get a transitional edge, and you will lose the drawing some at first. And that's okay, because what we're doing the whole time, we're always thinking about the drawing and trying to get it back. So as long as you're doing that, you're gonna make mistakes, but you'll find that you're looking to get it back quicker, right? My dad's falling asleep. Let's go back in with right here, something, a mid-tone like this. I'm gonna soften this edge just a little bit. You know what I can do too? Here's the thing. I can also blend these colors. So I had this, and this is the color here. Normally I don't recommend mixing on the canvas, but at this stage you can kind of just softly brush over it. It's gonna gray it out some. This transition is gonna be very milky and grayed out, kind of like your face. But that's okay, because we're just trying to get the impression. The impression is the correct light and the correct shape, right? And so when we squint down, we unify the light shapes, and we want to flash our eyes back and forth between reference photo and the painting and get that same feel of light, the same press of light, the intensity of light, the intensity of shadows, everything adjusted in the right shape. That's the impression. That's the light impression. That's what we mean by saying light impression. So, you all right, boy? He's okay. It's rough being an old goat. It's rough. You'll find that it's very difficult in the like areas right here where it's kind of an in-between, you know, it's like how light or how dark something is. And I'm going to show you how to key up in a little bit. But at this stage, we're just keeping this, like I said, very simple, and just focus on the drawing. Focus on the drawing. And I'm going to be doing a lot of blending here. Like I can kind of blend here, but I'm squinting down. And see, women's faces are nice and soft, and there's a lot of subtlety to them. And photographs can be tricky. They can be tricky because there's you know, really, I mean, it looks like the person, but really, if you think about it, a lot of the information is diffused and it's lost. And so I always recommend going off real life for this type of stuff. Now, at this stage, we're starting to key it up, which means to get a comparison of light and dark values to a degree. And so what do you do when you start doing that? Normally what we do, we take some white right here, and we put it right down there so we know that says light as we go, and we do the same thing with the dark. And we're establishing our value range. So even at this stage, if you want, I recommend putting a little swatch right there so you know how light and how dark you can go with this, right? And so right here, this is a very thin white that I'm using. I normally use a thicker white, but that's as light and dark as it can go. So now it gives us a holistic, a better perspective of where this value, this lightness stands, right? Now, at no one point is there going to be that, even in the highlights, it's not going to be that white, but we know physically how bright we can push it. All right, so from here, I'm just mixing in between the values right here. I am not going in with color. Now, when I paint, because I have more experience with this, I do think about color and I do add color. And I'll do a video of a painting that I'm just painting like I normally paint. And the reason why I say that is not to brag, but it's to give you an idea of exactly where you're going with this. Because I'm telling you to paint basic, does that mean you always need to? No, but for a beginner moron, peasant, idiot, mongrel, butthole, I recommend starting very simple like this. So you learn the painting process, right? We learn the process. And that way you can just continue to go, and eventually you'll be able to compress the stages. You understand the stages because you've been through it, you know, all of them. Now even this right here, I would go in with a different value. Like I know that's gonna be white ish, but you can also go in with, you know, the same flesh tone value, and then you can change the color later, because we're thinking, we're just thinking get the main shapes. Ooh, that's off. We're just thinking get the big shape, get the light impression. That's what we're thinking here. And so we're going to work on this, and I'm going to get essentially, I'll probably speed this up a little bit for you and show you exactly how it looks, and I'll work it up. Once I work on it a little bit more, I'll go through and narrate a little bit more what I'm doing at the stage, at the further stage, just to give you an idea of what's going on. Again, I'm trying to speed this up for you guys so this video is not going to be, you know, lasting freaking forever, okay? But I do want you to get a holistic idea of the process, so that if you try this, you kind of have a template of how to go about doing this, because I know this can be very tricky, but I think you kind of get the idea with this so far. And even with the lips, we don't need to necessarily go and add, like, you know, color in right now, but I'm not just thinking like fill everything in. I'm trying to get the overall shape and correct the overall shape while adding a sense of light to it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to work on this a little bit and time-lapse it forward, and then I will do a little bit of commentary at that future stage. I've partially worked this up at this point, and I have really been making some changes. I had to make the forehead bigger. I might be moving the eye up and down some. My eye's getting a little bit old. I've been painting probably for about an hour or so on this. I've kind of lost track. If you're a beginner peasant, keep it at this stage for at least honestly a week or two even. Just, you want to take your time to get the big shapes. Now, I wanted to demonstrate to you exactly how I'm working on it at this stage. I'll probably do one more time lapse on it, but say the concepts are the same. So if I want to go in and fix transitions, kind of bring this light up, you know, I might have to, for example, the cheekbone might kind of come up just a little bit here. And I'm not worried about mixing the individual values and getting the light totally fine. This is a little bit sharp in here, so let's soften this up just a little bit. This right here is actually still, I think, the board. Now imagine if you had a lot of white showing. A lot of this would be looking a little bit darker. It's okay that we've established the value range there, because now we can see exactly how light or dark we're going. But we have everything covered, so it should be easier to place your values right here. Normally, what, go with a darker value right here, slightly darker but still in the light, just to turn this area. And I might have to cut back up in with the lip color right here, which essentially I did add just a little bit of red into it. So we have something like that, and let me demonstrate to you how at this stage I paint, and you can try doing this, but I don't recommend adding a lot of color and trying to get the specific colors. But if I, for example, right now, or anybody, if you're experienced with this stuff, when we're getting the values, we can also be thinking about the colors, right? Now, this essentially is kind of the next stage that we're going for. So if I'm going for the cheek color, for example, let's try to get this right here. And I am actually going to make it a little bit more purpley right here and add a little bit more color. So I got the value and I got the color, and then I'm going to come in and I can start adding some of that color in right here as well as here, right? If that needs to be lighter, then we can come in, and I've done several videos on demonstrating how to get the color and the value pretty quickly, but this is how I work currently. Purposefully, for the sake of this video, I have repressed the color to show you that it doesn't really matter. The main thing is we get the drawing, and so that's what I'm going for. So I'm going to continue working on this, but I am going to take a break and come back tomorrow. You'll just see it as a time lapse, but the next time I speak about this in a couple seconds, it will be the next day, and I will have gotten much more work done, because it's important to rest your eyes. Take your time at this stage, Drawing is the most important thing. Get the light impression in the drawing and take your time. Be patient with yourself because painting is extremely difficult. Not for me, but for everybody else. But since I have worked this up and I still have a lot to go on this, a long way to go, essentially I'm not really trying to mix and get separate colors as much as I am just mixing between these basic values that you see right here. And then in the next phase, I'll go and start really trying to add some color. After a while, after you've been painting for some time, it's easier to go and start adding color in as you paint. Even from the beginning. But we're always trying to get the drawing, trying to get the light impression, the big shapes correct, and so that's what I've been trying to do. So there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. The eyes are a little bit off. This isn't quite lining up. This is very underworked right now. I have been going through with some of the transitions, and for example, say, let's pick a spot. So right here, the transition right here, that's a little bit squarish looking. So I'm gonna go in with a transitional brush. Now I have two ways of doing this. I can either go and what I'm doing, I'm taking the value which I think it's gonna be here. And in the next stage, I might say, okay, add some color. And I can do a little bit right here if I want, but I don't want you beginner morons to start adding the color in yet. I just want you focusing on just the value, how light or dark it is just between these colors. The color we can add later on as we're correcting the drawing, but at this stage right here, we can go and say, okay, I'm gonna squint down and just see kind of a value coming across this way and just lightly paint it in. So I'm squinting down, just lightly placing it. And this is slightly darker, so I'm just gonna bring this up a little bit, and we kind of have this shelf where it kind of turns up into the cheek. And so we're thinking about form, we're thinking about the drawing, we're thinking about values, we're trying to correct our drawing. This is like bar drawing, it's like figure drawing. That's why I do so many videos on drawing. I'm gonna go in with the same brush right here, and I'm gonna darken this right here, go for a little bit darker transition. In fact, I might have a brush. No, this was actually the brush, my transitional brush. That I was using. So I'm not going to go and grab color this time, though that's what you do down the road. And the cheeks are normally a little bit pinker, and so we come in and we can put a brush stroke that essentially is the exact same stroke. So I'm going to go in here into this value right here, a little bit darker, and I'm going to just with one stroke kind of bring that in some, and I'm lightly just squinting down. And it's okay at this stage to mix a little bit more on the painting. We just don't want it to get totally muddied and grayed out and what have you. So I still have not pushed the lightest lights up yet. I'll start bringing the lights up next, but at this stage, we're still going and we're trying to correct the proportions, and we're working all around the figure. So, I mean, essentially this is very similar to, like I said, like it's the same stuff in drawing, right? In drawing, we think the same way. We have to, our main goal is to get the drawing, in this case, the light impression. And so just think of it like this. I know painting can be a little bit tricky, but a lot of it does have to do with, I'm trying to get the right color. So that's why we mix these basic color values right here, and we mix between them. And I don't want you mixing all day trying to find, not at this stage, trying to find the exact color value. Instead, just slow yourself down and just work on the values, or rather, I'm sorry, the drawing with these basic values. And so that's how we're doing it. Let's soften that some. Let's soften that area some. So let's come in. I'm going to go in with the same brush, but I'm going to put it kind of on the lighter spectrum here. It's going to be somewhere probably in here. And we're just going to come in and just lightly, that might be a little bit too light. Let's darken it a little bit. We'll just take our time. Let's darken it. We're going to bring this down some. Somewhere around here. Let's try this. Just soften that. I kind of like seeing some brush stroke there anyway, but that's how we kind of can turn a transition. But like I said, it's okay to kind of be a little bit more loose and free on the canvas at this stage when we're working. So this, my friends, is how we go about it. It's been what I've been trying to do with this. As you can tell, I'm just kind of blending things in. I'm squinting down, trying to get the basic light impression. And you know, if you're a beginner, just keep it at this stage for like at least a week. And I'm not kidding, just get the drawing correct. You get the drawing correct, and then we slowly start building up the light. Take your time. The lessons are more important to learn than getting a finished painting out, unless obviously if it's commissioned, you have to work on that. In the next video, we'll be going over the buildup of color and light values leading towards the final detailing stage of the work. And kids, I have a few choice words of wisdom for all of you out there watching. A foolish man gives his wife a grand piano, while the wise man gives his wife an upright organ.